Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Mike Hughes and I am Head of Research and Insight at FMCG Gurus. Today's presentation is entitled Market Opportunities for nutricosmetics. Now there is a lot of data in this presentation, but you can obtain it in three different ways. You can contact us directly for a copy at info@FMCG Gurus. It will be distributed by VitaFoods, and our marketing team has put a QR code at the end so that you can scan. So we're going to look at nutricosmetics. We're going to look at consumer attitudes to skin health. We're going to look at some opportunities that exist around GLP-1 usage, hydration, clean energy. We're also going to look at some of the challenges around credibility. Now, the one thing that I would like you to think about with nutricosmetics from a consumer perspective is, firstly, I think we need to clearly define what nutricosmetics is. We see so many buzzwords within the industry, superfoods, functional foods, nutraceuticals. After a while, they become so proliferated that we kind of don't know what they mean and they become nothing more than a buzzword. Secondly, we need to understand where nutricosmetics sit. Because consumers recognize that they can, turn to everyday products to boost their skin health. In the UK, we're told as kids, fish is something that helps with your skin. So it needs to be something more active than that. But are they products that can genuinely compete with lotions and creams in terms of active ingredients from perceptions of efficacy or pampering? And my answer is no. And, I was talking to somebody last night about this presentation. And I said something very simple. If you had a child, and I've got a 7-year-old, would you trust a capsule that protected them from UV light, irrespective of the innovation that's gone into it, over dousing them in sun cream where you know they're protected? And I think that's one of the challenges. So we're going to have an overview of where these products can best be positioned. So firstly, skin health is very interesting. No consumer wakes up in the morning and evaluates their health based on their gut microbiome or makes an assessment on their vulnerability to disease and illness. But they do make an assessment based on what they see in the mirror. So skin health can often be seen as a definition of what their overall health is. Yet what we see is consumers aren't particularly satisfied with their skin health, only 31%. But it's actually not a massive concern, or there's not a massive jump for people who want to improve their skin health over the next 12 months. Just to give you some comparison, if we ask that around mental well-being or energy levels, satisfaction would be about the same, perhaps a bit lower, but the number of people who want to improve it would be near double that. So it shows that consumers aren't always thinking about their skin health. And there can be certain reasons for that. Some consumers may not give it due attention. They may think that they can, address it simply through getting an earlier night, making modifications in their dietary habits. Older consumers can sometimes see, deterioration in skin health in a positive light. Wrinkles are associated with maturity, experience. Older men may feel it's social to be wanting to address their skin health. So it shows that, consumers are concerned about it, but they're not necessarily being proactive. But we know over the next 12 months, skin health's going to be impacted. Consumers are in this vicious cycle where they wake up feeling tired, they feel stressed, they feel fatigued, they don't have enough sleep, they have low energy. All of that is going to impact on skin health. It's going to result in people waking up, looking in the mirror, and pretty much feeling bad about themselves. So that opportunity is there. There's also going to be an opportunity from increased usage of GLP-1 medication. We did some research last year, and it showed around 17% of consumers said that they'd used GLP-1 medication in some capacity. Just want to highlight with that, one of the things we talk about GLP-1 is the challenge of the black market and fakes and the rise of online sales through social media. My view is 17% of consumers think they're using some form of GLP-1 medication. In reality, they're not. They bought something online through a private channel marketed as GLP medication, and that's going to not perhaps have the effect that they want. It's more driven by younger consumers who are using it online. And we're also seeing things like it being used for sports nutrition, which is something which I don't think it was intended to be used for. But nevertheless, we know that more people are willing to use it. We know that consumers are suffering side effects, quite severe side effects, to the extent it makes them think that they're going to give up treatment. Some of these include muscle erosion, sagging skin, dehydration. All things that create the opportunity around nutricosmetics. Consumers don't want to lose weight to improve their self-confidence, but then have a result of sagging skin where it kind of undermines the original purpose that they turn to it. As mentioned, consumers already buy into the notion that food and drink can help skin health. So it's not necessarily about radical change, it's about understanding where the positioning is. Consumers associate a number of ingredients with aiding skin health. The main one, unsurprisingly, is aloe vera, which shows that there's opportunities around botanicals. We're seeing a growth in collagen and fish collagen related to that. You know, we've spoken to a lot recently about clients and how you can position this at younger people and go through the sustainability element, play off the power of the ocean. So consumers, you know, are looking into these ingredients. Collagen is benefiting as well because consumers are becoming more aware with the link with joint and muscle health, with immunity. So that multiple benefits really helps them. One thing to understand is, whilst consumers recognise ingredients are good for them, not to overestimate their levels of education. It's pretty basic. So consumers tend to be benefit-led rather than ingredient-led. So whilst credibility is important, simply saying this contains 10 grams, etc., or something of this ingredient alone won't drive sales. You've got to clearly communicate why it benefits the consumer in a credible way. We also see consumers are interested in skin health claims in a variety of product categories. Bottled water being the obvious one because of a link with hydration and skin, you know, something again we're taught about from childhood. We also see products synonymous with the breakfast cereal, milk, cereal, juice and smoothies, you know. I think that's the time of the day when consumers feel at their most health orientated. But it actually taps into something I discussed yesterday about consumers. Perhaps one of the ways to target them is in the morning, consumers can often wake up feeling sluggish. And sometimes, you know, for all the array of functional claims, consumers want a product that, instead of them waking up feeling a 5 out of 10, they want to wake up feeling a 7 out of 10. They want to wake up feeling motivated, happy, in a good mood, ready to take on all the challenges of the day. And I think this is something that can tap into the concept of nutricosmetics, healthy skin, healthy mind, healthy body, waking up feeling revitalized. And it's something that we'll discuss later on, avoiding some of the pitfalls that we saw about 2 decades ago with the whole anti-aging and stereotyping beauty. So, you know, consumers are buying into this concept. It's not a radical idea for them. The critical aspect, however, is ensuring that products are deemed to offer a benefit beyond general well-being. And just to show you something, consumers aren't particularly trusting of food and soft drinks brands at the moment. They believe that brands can engage in greenwashing, health claiming. They don't have the best interest of a consumer at heart, and they can make misleading claims to command a premium price. And the new nutricosmetics market faces a bit of a double whammy at the moment because, one, when times are hard and consumers are struggling with finances, they tend to become even more skeptical. And that's before, you know, consumers can be exposed to things like misinformation online. The second is most consumers won't have heard of nutricosmetics. So when you're trying to position this product, it increases the risk that consumers will say, I really don't understand positioning a food and drink product as something that can compete against a cream or a lotion. So credibility is something that is going to have to be really important. Now, when we look at priorities, when buying nutrition products, the top 2 answers as something that are interlinked is multiple functional benefits combined with scientific claims. So research and credibility is really, really important. I'm going to mention something later on about hydration and about the importance of credibility because, you know, I go around to some events and I've been before with category managers and people have seen claims and they've said this product will never get on the shelves just because that claim does not stack up. It's too generic. It's too vague. So you've got to have these multiple functional benefits linking skin health to things like hydration, to energy, to mood, to various other aspects, but you've got to show the science, you've got to show the clinical evidence, you've got to say, you know, this is backed up, particularly if that product commands a premium type. Because after all, spending on health and wellness is becoming more considered at the moment. And just to highlight something with that, we were talking before about VitaFoods compared to 4 or 5 years ago, and just how much of a message is being changed in health and wellness. You know, at the beginning of a decade, we were talking very much around disease management, and that was like really obvious because consumers had questioned their health in a way that they never done before because of COVID. That's changed now. You know, consumers, when we talk about longevity, consumers are human. They don't wake up every single day thinking about what do I have to do to get to 80 and be fit and healthy. Instead, consumers are thinking about the here and now. Their spending is becoming more considered. They're more preoccupied with other things. You know, when COVID was in the news every day and R rates and infection rates were in the news every day, of course they were thinking about their health. But when other things are in the news preoccupying them, health takes that little bit of a second step into the here and now. So consumers are still willing to spend on products, but it's more considered. Is this genuinely needed? Is it effective? Or can I obtain that nutrient from somewhere else? And just to give you an example, you know, we did some research on consumers who use nutritional supplements. When we asked about general health and wellness, it's 3 in 10, something that's remained unchanged over the last couple of years. Between 2023 and 2025, it's kind of stayed at 17 to 13%. Now, that drop to me isn't statistically relevant, so I'm not going to say that there's been a fall in it. I'm saying that consumers, you know, when they turn to supplements, they don't tend to do it compared to other things, compared to cognitive health, compared to immunity. They recognize that they can obtain nutrients from everyday food and drink to help boost their skin health. So it means that if you're going to go down the market of nutritional supplements, you really need to emphasize the efficacy. And I think with this, the format is something that's absolutely crucial. We've spoken so much recently about, you know, capsules versus gummies. And I think within the market, my personal opinion is consumers still prefer the capsules because of the psychological element that it's closer to medication and the association with maximum efficacy. And I think if you try and position products around gummies, there might be a bit of a backlash, particularly when consumers think they have gels, lotions, etc., that can already address their skin health. It should also seem to be promoting the concept of beauty within. 86% said that they'd be willing to buy a food, drink, or supplement that aids their skin health. So again, the opportunity is there. Consumers will want it for self-confidence. They'll want it for improved appearance, you know, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. But I think, you know, what we need to avoid is some of the lessons from a couple of decades ago when we focused on anti-aging, when we made things like getting older a bad thing, we associated it with vulnerability. And it didn't appeal to consumers, particularly those at certain life cycles where they talked about where they were in their life stage. They had grandchildren, they'd seen friends die younger. Having some wrinkles was not something that they were concerned about at all, and we shouldn't be stereotyping and putting younger people under pressure to look good. So whilst empowerment and self-confidence are messages that should be promoted within the industry, we need to tie it to other things. Feeling happy, mood enhancement, reduced levels of stress, feeling hydrated, and linking the messages with that, and tapping into that thing of holistic wellness and saying, look, skin is physical, you know, it influences our appearance, that's obvious, but it's only one side of it. It's actually reflective of everything else, because if you've got poor skin, it means that there's other areas of health that might be lacking, and tying that message and making it positive, rather than making any mistakes where you're inadvertently potentially offending older consumers and putting younger consumers under pressure to look good. Nutricosmetics are also well placed to capitalize on the growing interest in proactive hydration. Now, the proactive hydration market is something where the nutricosmetics market can have a look at. I went to an event last year in the UK, I won't mention what it is, and I walked around with a category insight manager, and we was looking at all these products that had hydration slapped on them, and they were going to command a premium price. It was bottled water, repackaged to command a premium price because it was a buzzword. Now, consumers are recognizing the difference between satisfying thirst and proactive hydration. You know, sports nutrition means that they become more aware of electrolytes, for instance. Consumers also recognize that they're not hydrated enough. They realize that this is something that can often be self-inflicted. They don't drink enough water. There can be misconceptions about products that hydrate. Consumers turn into coffee and products high in caffeine to be able to keep hydration, mistaking that energy boost with feeling hydrated. You know, consumers admit that they don't like the taste of water. That figure is always higher than, it always surprises me, that figure. But nevertheless, there's this real opportunity to target proactive hydration. The key is credibility through scientific claims and differentiation. Now, when we ask consumers about hydration, they're taking a greater interest in it. They associate it with a variety of benefits beyond improving, well, hydration. They associate it with energy levels, mental well-being, but also skin health. You know, skin health and hydration are something that's synonymous, again, that we're taught about from a young age. If you don't drink enough water, it can have an impact on your skin health. So there's that real opportunity, you know, along with GLP-1 rising usage and demand for clean energy products, that if these products are positioned in the right way, there is a clear demand. The key is absolutely positioning it in the right way. Now, as mentioned, the nutricosmetics industry must also address potential barriers that exist. So, you know, we ask consumers about top 5 concerns when buying nutrition products in general. 60% said cost. Now, you know, consumers are suffering from rising prices. That figure was asked way before any of the recent conflicts in Iran that might have an impact on fuel prices, which will further put consumers under strain. But it nevertheless shows that spending is considered. Consumers are driven by value rather than low cost, so they'll still buy products and they'll still trade up. But the key is understanding that this product isn't acting as a placebo type effect. It isn't making misleading claims. It isn't just linked to general wellness. There is an active ingredient that has an active benefit that is backed up by scientific research where the company can credibility say, use this the right way as part of an overall diet and healthy lifestyle, and it will benefit you. Concerns about side effects. You know, consumers don't want to use a product to improve one element of their health if they feel that they have side effects, you know, and we know consumers don't always use functional products in the right way, but nevertheless, if it's something that seems to have an adverse side effect, it's something that will impact you. The third one, and I think this is something that's really important, concerns about naturalness. One of the things that I've seen here over compared to previous years is that there is a real focus on naturalness now. I think the market is learning lessons. There's concerns around ultra processing, where consumers are becoming concerned about ingredients. We've learned lessons from a plant-based market where, you know, it had this health halo that was kind of evaporated overnight when people started looking at the ingredient list. And consumers focus that avoidance and moderation is just as much as positive nutrition. So it doesn't matter how many positive ingredients your product has. If it's loaded with chemicals, there's going to be a concern. And lessons from that can actually be taken from, well, directly the cosmetics market. You know, we all think about the 70s and 80s, how products were tested on animals, that they had paraffins in, ingredients like that. Consumers were concerned about it, and it showed that the need for natural alternatives. So don't fall into the trap that the cosmetic market fell into 30 years ago by launching a product that's very high in claims, but as a result of that, it's also got quite a few artificial ingredients in. Credibility is something that's also crucial with nutricosmetics. You know, skin health is a very emotive industry. There's always a lot of brand ambassadors, and you know, we've had clients ask, what is the best route to market? You know, some of the questions we've been asked recently is, if I've got a skincare product market, do I go down the doctor influence, or do I go down the K-pop culture route? Do I use a celebrity ambassador, or do I use a skin healthcare professional? And our answer is, any use of social media and celebrity culture should be given a minimal secondary usage. One, it can raise awareness very quickly, but it's something where if somebody is giving information that is not credible, not inaccurate, that is detrimental to the brand and also the person, that could have a long-term effect, not just on the brand, but on the credibility of the industry. We have a really, really exceptional team of analysts and marketing, and they tell me about all these trends that are going on. And they mentioned last year on TikTok how social media celebrities were talking about one of the ways to deal with sleep health was to tape your mouth shut before you go to bed. I couldn't believe this, but apparently, you know, this was a trend. And when you've got somebody promoting information like that, then you don't want them anywhere near your brand if you want to go down the credibility route, no matter how many millions of followers they've got. Instead, you need to look at doctors, pharmacists, dietitians, cosmetologists. You need to talk about how to position these products and, again, enhance the credibility. This is a product that can help support skin health. It's not a magic bullet health solution. It's not an instant solution. You know, it's really important how you position it. And the long-term outcome of this market will be determined by credibility and positioning. It's also important that nutricosmetic brands are not seen to be stereotyping beauty. You know, I mentioned about, you know, different generations have a different approach to skin health. Absolutely not surprising at all. Gen Z are twice as likely to be concerned about their skin health compared to baby boomers. You know, baby boomers are at that stage of their life where they accept where they are, they accept wrinkles, they see it as a sign of maturity. Whereas younger people, you know, they can be very appearance conscious. They're looking to succeed personally and professionally. They believe that society can stereotype beauty. You know, we saw things 20 years ago, 30 years ago in the UK, where brands were being seen to stereotype beauty, and then we wondered why bulimia and other eating disorders were going through the roof amongst younger adults. You know, that's something that we need to avoid, and thankfully the market has come a long way since that. But again, it just shows that the messages need to be around healthy aging, around avoiding feeling sluggish, about empowerment, about self-confidence, about putting something where we can say, actually, this is going to maximize your appearance, which could potentially put people under pressure to look good. So to give you my overview of where the nutricosmetics market is, it's not something that can directly target consumer industries such as creams and lotions. It's something to complement them. You know, I mentioned the sun cream industry. It could be the most effective tablet ever. It could have so much scientific research. My view is it won't replace the notion of putting sun cream on a child, for instance, because the only way you'll find out if that capsule doesn't work is when your kids got burnt. And you just don't want to avoid that. And when there's a market established, you've got to know your limits. You're not going to compete with it. Simply the pampering, you know, the whole thing of spas, either out of home, at home, nobody is going to replace that with a powder, no matter how premium the packaging. You know, they want the pampering, the luxury element of it. Don't go into a market you can't compete. However, it can be positioned around ensuring that benefits obtained from creams and lotions don't undermine the impact of skin health because of eating and drinking habits. You've got a product that complements these rather than competes against them. This is something where it's got good ingredients, fewer bad ingredients. It doesn't impact your skin health in a way that, you know, traditionally comfort snacking and eating would, for instance. In addition, the products can leverage skin health and holistic beauty to encourage consumers to follow a balanced and healthy lifestyle. So to conclude, skin health is a concern for consumers at a time when they evaluate their health based on what they see in the mirror. But again, I think more can be done to make it proactive. You know, that motivation doesn't necessarily align with levels of concern. More could be done to encourage them to take a proactive approach. They're interested in nutricosmetic products, especially those that promote multiple benefits. But they need to be seen as something more than a general wellness product that have an active claim, an active benefit, an active ingredient backed up with scientific research. The bottled water and beverage market should be a key area for nutricosmetic brands to target, particularly because of those links with clean energy and hydration. But absolutely crucial more than ever, credibility is crucial. These products need to be given the right positioning, the right message, and avoid some of the pitfalls that we've discussed. So as mentioned, the presentation will be available at the end. You can either scan this, you can contact us directly for a copy at info@fmcggurus.com, or it will be available for distribution after the event.